Miss Elizabeth?
Okay, ladies, let's be honest. How many of us desire for a man who will write us poetry as if we were his muse? I know when Anthony Bridgerton expressed,
You are the bane of my existence and the object of all my desires.
many women, including myself, were very much infatuated.
I dream.
I don't think it was solely the way Anthony and Kate fell in love with the iconic enemies to lovers trope, which is still by far the greatest trope in the romance genre, but I believe the way Anthony confesses his desires and affections for Kate with intention caused for many of us to be in a fit. Now, the reason why I mention this moment is because I have been reflecting on the way that love is depicted in literature and felt that it would be a good idea to analyze how two of the greatest poets in history, Petrarch and Dante, were able to detail their love for their muse within their poems. This analysis will be exclusively regarding the bodies of work titled Canzoniere and Vita Nuova, and within these texts, we will be deconstructing the depictions of Laura and Beatrice, who are the muses within each respective piece. Now, before we move forward with this analysis, we must first work to define the muse. The muses, from which this word derives, is taken from Greek mythology, where they are the daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne, and are ultimately the goddesses of the arts, as well as the proclaimers of heroes.
We are the muses.
If we're to look at the word muse, however, it is simply defined as the object of inspiration for an artist, which Laura and Beatrice act as. Driving further into this preamble, we must also identify a framework or lens that will help us to further analyze these two works. Fascinating Womanhood by Helen Andelin is a book that aims to assist marriage-minded women in establishing a marriage that feels like a love affair. The main framework that was utilized within this readings is the framework of the ideal woman from a man's point of view. This ideal woman has two sides to her, the angelic side and the human side. The angelic side of this ideal woman inspires a feeling of worship that brings him peace and happiness, whilst the human fascinates, amuses, captivates, and enchants him. It arouses a desire to protect and shelter. Essentially, the ideal woman must encapsulate these two sides of her being in order to spark the deepest level of affection from her man. Make sure to keep this in mind as we work through the two pieces, Canzoniere by Francesco Petrarch and Vita Nuova by Dante Alighieri. Now that we have established our framework, let's begin by diving into our first work, Canzoniere. We will be reading the full poem in section 126, but we will break down section 366 as it is quite long. So, beginning with section 126.
Clear, cool, sweet running waters, where she for me, the only woman, would rest her lovely body. Kind branch on which it pleased her, I sighed to think of it, to make a column of her lovely side, and grass and flowers which her gown richly flowing, covered with its angelic folds, sacred airs serene, where love with those fair eyes opened my heart. Listen all of you together to these mournful, my last words. If it indeed must be my fate, and heaven works its ways, that love close up these eyes while they still weep, let grace see my poor body be buried there among you, and let my soul return to its home naked, then death would be less harsh. If I could bear this hope unto that fearful crossing, because the weary soul could never in a more secluded port, in a more tranquil grave, flee from my poor belabored flesh and bones. And there will come a time perhaps, that to the well-known place the lovely animal returns, untamed, and there where she first saw me, that day which now is blessed, she turned her eyes with hope and happiness in search of me, and, ah, the pity! To see me there as dust among the stones, love will inspire her, and she will sigh so sweetly, she will win from me some mercy, and force open the heavens, drying her eyes there with her lovely veil. Falling from gracious boughs, I sweetly called to mind were flowers in a rain upon her bosom. She was sitting there humble in such glory, now covered in a shower of love's blooms. A flower falling on her lap, some fell on her blonde curls, like pearls set into gold they seemed to me that day. Some fell to rest on the ground, some on the water, and some in love-like wandering were circling down and saying, "Here love reigns." How often I would say, at that time, full of awe. For certain she was born up there in heaven. And her divine behavior, her face and words and her sweet smile so filled me with forgetfulness and so divided me from the true image that I would sigh and say, just how and when did I come here? Thinking I was in heaven, not where I was. And since then I have loved this bank of grass and find peace nowhere else. If you had all the beauty you desired, you could with boldness leave the wood and make your way among mankind.
As we can see, after reading this section of the text, Petrarch heavily emphasizes Laura's divinity and how the earth seems to flow around her, how the earth seems to work around her. The description that he makes of her is so distinctive, yet so nuanced, that you could see a painting of a woman with blonde hair in an area like this and consider her to be Laura. Petrarch does a phenomenal job at displaying the angelic image of Laura, using words like angelic, serene, and even indicating in stanza 52 that love, the figure, was there with her, implying that her essence endeared love to be by her side continually. The femininity that Laura exudes from her attire and her overall physical maintenance allowed for Petrarch to become enthralled, enraptured, and enchanted with her beauty. I absolutely love the detail of her angelic, humble nature being the cause for the earth to react to her presence rather than the opposite. Petrarch goes into detail of the flower petals that flow on and around Laura's body, presenting this image stamped in time. Before we continue on to the next section, I would love to know which area of this section of the reading did you guys enjoy the most? I think for myself personally, I really loved stanzas 40 through 52, as I was really able to visualize that section. And also, it really gave off the impression that he was truly in love with this woman based off of how he just depicted the way that she was sitting next to that tree. I don't know, just you feel the love exuding from this. But let me know in the comments down below which one you enjoyed the most. But now, let's consider the ways in which Petrarch goes to describe Laura in section 366.
Virgin, so lovely clothed in the sun's light, and crowned with stars, so pleased the highest sun that inside you he chose to hide his light. Love urges me to speak of you in verse, but I cannot begin without your help, and his who loving placed himself in you. I call upon the one who always answered, whoever called with faith. Virgin, if toward mercy for extreme misery of worldly things you ever turned, then bend now to my prayer and help me in my war, though I am dust and you are queen of heaven. Virgin so wise, one of the lovely number of all the blessed, prudent virgins, rather the first of them and with the brightest light. O sturdy shield for all who are afflicted against the blows that death and fortune wield, beneath which they're triumphant, more than saved. O refuge from blind ardor that is raging in foolish mortals here. Virgin, those lovely eyes that saw in sorrow those pitiless wounds upon the sweet limbs of your cherished son, turn to my dangerous state, who come in prudence to you for your help. Virgin so pure and perfect in all ways, mother and the daughter both of your own child, who brightened this life and adorned the other. Through you, your son, son of the highest Father, O shiny lofty window of the heavens, came down to save us in the final days, and you among all earthly dwelling places he chose, and only you. Virgin, so blessed and holy, who changed the tears of Eve to happiness, make me, for you can, worthy of this grace. O blessed without end, already crowned in the supernal realm.
As we can see, this section leans heavily into the angelic side of the ideal woman, the side that evokes feelings of worship from a man. The first true indication of this is between stanza 14 and 16. This section speaks to the parable that Jesus speaks to in the Bible regarding the 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins. The parable details the 10 virgins standing outside the bridegroom's house, waiting for his arrival. 5 of the virgins, while waiting for his arrival, took it upon themselves to gather a sufficient amount of oil for their lamps, whilst the other 5 simply waited. When it was night and the announcement of the bridegroom's arrival came, the The foolish virgins had insufficient oil in their lamps and had to seek out any oil around the area. When they left, the bridegroom arrived and welcomed in the 5 wise virgins before shutting the gate. The 5 foolish virgins arrived and begged for the bridegroom to allow them entrance, to which he responds, "Depart, for I never knew you." The implication of the section is that Lauda is the first of the wise women, giving her the highest regard that could be given, indicating how spiritual she must be as a Christian woman and how closely she must align with the Proverbs 31 woman as well. The next stanza that highly regards her angelic side are stanzas 27 to 34. Petrarch's regard for Lauda is very high in this section and continues to grow in later sections, as in this section he regards her as Mary, Mother of God. Section 366 of the Canzoniere seems to be a section where he conflates a lot between his depictions of Lauda in the spiritual sense. This section and the past section, he denotes her as an important woman within the Bible, one as the first wise virgin and the next Mary, Mother of Christ. This set of stanzas, 61 through 65, brings about another feeling of worship and high regard for Lauda from Petrarch. He places her in the position of a spiritual intercessor of his prayer to God. This is similar to the role of the priest, as they are deemed the intercessor on earth to those who want to pray to God. Although various denominations of Christianity believe that we can speak to God ourselves, during the time in which the Canzoniere was written, Catholicism was the main form of Christianity in Italy. This act of placing Lauda in this position as intercessor indicates a deep feeling of worship that Petrarch does indeed hold for Lauda. It also could bring into question the concept of the halo effect within his writings, as it's commonly presented to those who have attractive features. Dante is another poet who has a similar trajectory of this infatuation that he informs us of in La Vita Nuova. Let's take a moment to read this excerpt. This section reads, "The hour in which her most sweet greeting reached me was firmly the 9th of that day. And because
that was the first time that her words were moved to come to my ears, I experienced such sweetness, that like one inebriated, I left all company and resorted to the solitary place of my room, and set about thinking upon this most courteous one. And thinking of her, I was overcome by a sweet sleep, in which there appeared to me a marvelous vision. I seemed to see in my room a cloud the color of fire, within which I discerned a figure of a master, of an aspect frightening to whoever might behold him, and he appeared so happy in himself, that it was a wondrous thing. And in his words he spoke of many things of which I understood only a few. Among his words I understood these: I am your Lord. I seemed to see in his arms a person asleep, naked except that she seemed to me lightly wrapped in a crimson cloth, one whom I, regarding with great attention, recognized as a lady of the salutation, who the day before had deigned to greet me. In one of his hands he appeared to hold something all aflame. He seemed to say to me these words: Behold your heart. And after he had waited a while, he appeared to awaken her who slept. And he so constrained her in his way that he made her eat this thing ablaze in his hand, which she consumed hesitatingly. After that, he abided but little before his happiness converted into most bitter weeping, and thus weeping he gathered this lady into his arms, and with her he appeared to ascend toward heaven, for which I suffered such a great anguish that I could not sustain my fragile sleep, which indeed broke and I awakened. And immediately I began to think, and I found that the hour in which this vision had appeared to me had been the 4th hour of the night, so that it appears manifestly to have been the first of the 9 last hours of the night.
As we can see, there is a very clear introduction to the very nature of worship that Dante will have towards Beatrice. This is even further explained by him in the following passage, which reads,
The true meaning of the said dream was not seen by anyone then, but now it is perfectly clear to the simplest. From this vision onward, my natural spirit began to be hindered in its operations, for my soul was wholly given to thoughts of this most gentle lady. Hence I soon became so frail and weak a condition that many friends worried about my appearance, and many who were filled with envy saw at once to know what I wanted wholly to conceal from others, and I, aware of the malicious questioning that they put to me, through the will of love, who commanded me according to the counsel of reason, replied that love it was, who had so guided me. I spoke of love because I bore on my face so many of his signs that could not be concealed. And when they asked, for whom has this love so ravaged you, I regarded them smiling and said nothing.
This entire process of having the vision and seeing Beatrice consume Dante's heart is pretty obvious indication of Dante's mind, soul, and very existence being consumed by the thought of Beatrice. It even gets to the point where this feeling of worship is so strong that his disposition becomes infinitely weaker and frail, that his friends begin to worry and question what is happening to him. Beatrice's ability to completely consume the mind of Dante reinforces his devotion and worship towards her, especially from such a young age. If you were to analyze another one of Dante's works, to further solidify this ideal woman in Beatrice, we would look at La Divina Commedia, or the Divine Comedy by Dante, where in either Purgatorio or Paradiso, because I can't remember which one it is, Beatrice acts as an intercessory force for Dante to guide him to God. Remember how Petrarch also had described Laura as an intercessory force in Canzoniere? It's the same thing. These two men have a heavily idealistic vision of their muses, where they view them as an intercessor between them and God. I hope this video was entertaining. I hope it provided some light into how love has been depicted within poetry, at least during the medieval era. I hope it was able to bring you joy, especially after Valentine's Day. But as always, I hope and pray that we can all find our way to achieving a rested feminine lifestyle.